welcome back. Long time no see. Dude, I thought I was out of my reading slump at the end of 2024, but it decided to last another 5 months, which is why I haven't posted in what feels like 8 years, but I'm back now. And what better way to come back than to talk about my 10 all-time favorite books. These are my absolute favorite books as of mid-2025. Obviously, these will probably change over the course of the next several years, but these are my absolute favorite books in existence as of currently. I think about every single one of these books on a regular basis. I have all 10. I rank them from least favorite to most favorite. Obviously, they're all my favorites, but like if I had to choose in order what my favorites were, this is the order of them. So we will go ahead and get started off at 10 and we will work our way up to 1, which is my all-time favorite book in literally ever. So first up at number 10, we have Darling Girls by Sally Hempworth. In this book, the focus is on 3 foster girls. They ended up in this foster home together that is run by this one lady named Miss Fairchild, and she's just the worst foster mother you can think of, and you just learn about all the stuff that happened when they were growing up in this home. You do get to see both the past and the present. So in the past, we see what happened in their foster home and the things they went through, and in the present, we kind of see how they turned out and how they are dealing with things. And a big factor in the present chapters is the fact that there's actually a body found underneath the foster home they grew up in, and so they become witnesses. They have to talk to the police. Throughout this book, you're just learning about their childhood and what went on in this foster home and kind of what they went through. And of course, the mystery of the whole book is who is this body that was found under the house. I just absolutely love this book. I think one of the things that I loved about this for being a thriller is that it was different from most thrillers that I've read. It was fun to read about foster kids and kind of this messed up home they grew up in. Whereas a lot of other thrillers I read, I feel like it's the same concept of some serial killer and trying to find them and like hunt them down, blah, blah, blah. So it's nice to have something unique from that I usually read. And then I can't lie, I think another reason that I hold this book so close to my heart is because I do have memories attached to it. This came out, I believe, in spring of 2024. And shortly after I bought this book, I went on a beach vacation with my mom. And so I just have memories of me sitting on the beach reading this, which I think I finished it literally in 2 days. I ate this up. I just have really good memories attached to this, and it was just a fantastic thriller, and the ending had my jaw literally on the floor. Next up at number 9, we have The Troop by Nick Cutter. This is a horror book. Out of all the horror books I've read, I think this is probably my number 1 recommendation. I don't want to give like the full synopsis, but basically this is about a Boy Scout troop that goes into the Canadian wilderness for just a fun weekend camping trip. But it quickly turns into a weekend for survival because they run into this bioengineered nightmare, is what the back of the book describes this as. I don't want to give anything away, so I won't even touch on that. I gotta say, this book has the best body horror I've ever read. I'm not one to get squeamish from movies or books or anything, but there is definitely some scenes in this book that kind of grossed me out. I was like, made me feel some type of way, felt kind of itchy and disgusted. This book honestly made me realize that I really like books that have body horror. I didn't think I would feel that way before I read this book, but after reading this book, it definitely changed my mind. So if you want to read a book that will just kind of gross you out and keeps you on the edge of your seat, I would definitely recommend this one. At number 8, we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the realm of the Elderlings. This series is 16 books in total, so it'll probably take me at least a few years to get through all of them. But this book, I still get flashbacks from. I don't know how to describe it, except when I read this book, I felt like I was literally there in the book watching everything unfold. So to this day, I get like flashbacks from this book. It's sort of like when you watch a movie and you randomly think of a scene in a movie like a couple weeks later. It's like that, except it was the book, but the book felt like a movie in my brain. I don't know if any of that made literally any sense, but I'm telling you, if you want to feel like you're in a book, read this. I honestly cannot tell you really what happened in this book. I feel like not a lot went on because this was very character driven. It was a little slower, which for me, I usually like something that's more plot driven, a lot more fast paced, more action. So the fact that this resonated with me so much says a lot, because I have not read another character heavy book that I have enjoyed as much as this one. I honestly can't entirely tell you what happened in this book or what it's about, but all I remember is it does focus on our main character Fitz, who is the bastard son of a prince, and he is kind of treated as an outcast. And then on the download, he's kind of taught the arts of being assassin, and you just kind of go along with him in his life and journey. And honestly, a lot of tragic things happen to him, and it's kind of a sad story, honestly, but it was so good, and I can't say enough good things about this book. At number 7, we have Infected by Scott Sigler. I feel like this book is so underrated. I don't hear anyone ever talk about this book. It's sort of a thriller, sci-fi, horror type of book. So this book is basically about this disease that is taking over America, and what happens if you contract this disease. You basically turn into a paranoid murderer. And so you get a little bit of backstory and what's going on overall with this disease in America. But the focus of this book is on one main character who is an ex-football player, and he just wakes up one day like noticing something ain't right. You just kind of go along this journey with this football player and what happens to him as this disease progresses, and it's just kind of messed up. I don't want to give too much away because I went into this book really blind. I just thought it sounded cool. I was like shocked by some of the things that happened in this book, and so I don't even want to mention them because I feel like that was half the fun of reading this. But let me just tell you, this book does also have a decent amount of body horror, just like The Troop. You might be seeing a trend by now. In my thriller horror books, I do seem to like body horror, and this again kind of made me feel some type of way, but it was so good. And it's honestly unlike anything I've read before. This is a trilogy. I've only read the first book so far, but I have heard the second book in particular might be the best of the trilogy. So I do want to continue on to see how I feel about it, but this book definitely still in my brain. I still get flashbacks from this as well. At number 6, we have Anathema by Carrie Lake. This came out, I believe, towards the end of 2024, and then the second and final book, I believe, comes out sometime this year. And honestly, this was strictly a cover buy. I thought the cover looked cool. I saw the cover and I was like, I want that. I know you're not supposed to judge a book based on its cover, but it kind of worked out in this case because this is one of my all-time favorite fantasy romance books. I don't know, this book, the atmosphere just felt very like dark and grim and moody, and I just imagined the world as having like clouds and rain all the time. I just love that vibe in a book, and I don't really remember what happened in this book, but I know I really liked it. It is over 600 pages, and I think I finished this in 3 days. Something about it drew me in so much. I like the girl main character in this, and the love interest is a shadow daddy. I know that is very played out, but I love it. I know I read in some reviews that there was some issues with the plot, which I do agree, but that does not change my opinion at all. I love this book. I don't entirely have like a good reason for why I liked it, but I just do. And if you like a gothic fantasy book, or you like something that feels a little more moody, I think you will really enjoy this. And this is the first book in the Eating Woods duology, and I'm just so excited for the second book to come out. We're now heading into my top 5 favorite books of all time. And at number 5, we have The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. And I know some of you are probably disappointed by this being at number 5 in my 10 favorite books of all time, and that it seems very basic, but I love this book so much. I think a big reason that it is in my top 5 is because this is really the book that got me into fantasy romance. I've never been a romance girly. Like, I can't get into romance books for whatever reason. Maybe someday, but I just have not been able to at this point. So I was like, there's no way I'm gonna like a fantasy romance book. But I was shopping on Target one day and I needed another book to get the discount, but there wasn't anything I was very interested in. But I saw this book and I was like, I've heard about this a ton. So I picked it up and I read this in just a couple sittings. I was obsessed. I was like, I did not think I was going to like this so much. And now I went from this one fantasy romance book to now having like 70 fantasy romance books, and it's now my favorite genre. And so I feel like this is really in my top 5 just because I do have to give this credit for getting me into fantasy romance. If you are new to fantasy romance, you haven't given it a try yet, or maybe you haven't read too much yet, I would honestly really recommend this book because it is the perfect mix between plot and fantasy and romance and a little spice. It felt like a good middle ground, and from here I could kind of figure out if I wanted books with more fantasy or with more spice. And this is just like the happy medium. I'm not even gonna give the synopsis on this because I feel like this has been talked about so much on Booktube and Book Talk, but all you need to know is good fantasy, good plot, good romance and spice, and vampires. And I didn't know I liked vampires before I read this either. Growing up, I actually never read Twilight or any of those books, so I didn't know if I liked that, but this book made me realize that I do, in fact, like reading about vampires. I just have to give a lot of credit to this book for getting me into this genre. At number 4, we have The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. I know, another very, very popular book, but for good reason. This was my first Brandon Sanderson book, so maybe that is why it's one of my favorites. It just is very memorable for me. People were not kidding when they said Brandon Sanderson is fantastic at writing characters. I didn't know what to expect going into this book, but I grew to love every single character in this book. This is one of the few books that got me very close to crying. I'm not a big crier when I read, but this got me close for sure, and I have nothing but good things to say about this. And since reading this, I just want to read all of Brandon Sanderson's books because I'm like, if anything is better than this or comes even close, then I'm here for it because I was obsessed with this book. If you have not read it yet, I 100% recommend. At number 3, we have Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is the second book in the Kindred's Curse saga. There's currently 3 books out, and we are waiting for the 4th and final book to be released, which I looked on Goodreads and it says 2026. I've been waiting for the 4th book since 2024, so that feels like forever away. But once it does finally release, you bet your bottom butt that I'm gonna be reading that on release day. And I'm sure some of you have already read this series, or maybe you have heard of it, and it is very hit or miss. I feel like everyone either absolutely loves it or absolutely hates it. There's no in between. I'll be honest, the first book was like so-so, probably 3.5 stars, and then books 2 and 3 were easy 5 stars for me, like 6 stars if I could give them 6 stars. This has a slow burn romance, which I love a slow burn romance. I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but once a couple is finally together, I sort of start to lose interest in a book. That sounds awful because the whole time you're rooting for them to be together. And then once they finally are, you think you'd be happy, but I'm like, boring. But this book had so much tension and I love that. Like, not a lot happened there, but the tension was there. I'm talking, this series is slow burn, like multiple books slow burn. So if you like a slow burn, this is probably my number 1 pick for that. And since the romance was more of a subplot and it was very slow burn, the focus was on the main plot and the fantasy, which I love. That's my personal preference in fantasy romance books. I want more fantasy and less romance rather than vice versa. The main character, a lot of people say she is very unlikable, which I agree, but honestly I didn't mind it. Like, she kind of makes dumb decisions throughout all of the books, but I'm like, I understand. Like, she's young, kind of dumb. It's fine. It's fine. I understand. I didn't mind her bad decision making, and I love the protectiveness of the male interest. He's hot. I don't care. There's not many love interests in a book that I'll be like, that character is hot, but he is. I love the male and female main character, and then all the friends and the side characters in these books are also fantastic. There's a few that you will fall in love with, and it's just kind of a found family, and then you get to explore the world a little bit that they're existing in. And I could envision this book so well, and I just loved it so much. This series is the only series I've ever read where after I finished reading it, I was like, what's the point of anything? Like, I had the biggest book hangover, and normally I just need like a day break in between books, and I'm like, all right, on to the next. That was good, but who cares? Let me read the next book. But this series, it took me a couple weeks after I finished the 3rd book. I literally didn't know what to do with my life. I was like, I just am gonna sit here and stare at a wall because I don't know what to do with myself, because I was so sad that I finished all 3 books. But I love this series so much, and I just cannot recommend it enough. All right, at number 2, we have Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorich. This is the first book in the Legacy series. There is currently 3 books out, and then the 4th and final book finally comes out this year, I believe at the end of August. So I am so excited. Every single one of these books in this series has been 5 stars so far. Books 1, 2, and 3, easy 5 stars, did not even have to think about it. Most books I read, it usually takes me like at least 50 to 100 pages pages for me to really get into it and be like, all right, I like this book, like I want to keep going. But this book, I was literally hooked by page 10. This book is over 600 pages and I finished it in 2 days. I literally just sat and read this book for 2 days straight. I was like, I'm not doing anything else until I finish this book because I was so obsessed. I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty details of what this book is about. I think it's fun to go in blind, but just know that this is a dark fantasy romance series. And by dark, I mean it's dark, it's messed up. You will actually hate everyone in this book pretty much. Normally I don't want to hate read, but this I could not stop. I was like, I hate all these characters so much, but I just want to keep reading. And then the characters develop even more in later books, and it was just so addictive. Throughout the entire time reading this, I was so angry yet so enthralled. I could not put this down. So if you have not read this already and you're into dark fantasy romance, I 100% recommend this book. This series and Kindred's Curse Saga are my two favorite fantasy romance series of all time. I think this one actually beats Kindred's Curse Saga out by a bit because all 3 books were 5 stars so far. Be warned, since it is dark fantasy romance, if you have any triggers, make sure to look up trigger warnings just to make sure you don't read anything you are not comfortable with. But if you are okay with the trigger warnings, then I 110% recommend this book. Just go into it blind, enjoy the ride. You'll enjoy it, but you'll also be very angry. So you'll be probably pissed by the end of this book, but it is so good. I cannot say enough good things. I love the magic system. I love the world. Love, hate the characters. But everything in this book was literal perfection to me, and I honestly don't have any critiques about this book or anything that I would change. It is just pure perfection. All right, time for my all-time favorite book in existence. At number 1, we have Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the second book in the Red Rising saga. It was a hard pick between books 2 and 3 for me, honestly. Book 3, Morningstar, only book to ever make me cry. Just by the way, like I told you earlier, I don't cry easily from books, but I cried in that one. Again, this is another book that is just pure perfection. A lot of people describe Red Rising, the first book, as like Hunger Games in space, which yes, it did have those vibes for sure, but books 2 and 3 just take everything to a whole new level. There's so much action, it's so fast paced, it's so go, go, go. You literally can't get bored. It's just never ending things happening. And I love the characters in these books. And I just feel such a connection to this series as a whole. Like if I had to choose my favorite series of all time, it is also going to be the Red Rising saga. This series is just so well written and so unique. I cannot say enough good things about it. I feel like I've said that about every single book. But out of all the books I've talked about today, if you're going to read one series or one book, please read Red Rising. And it is just the most universal recommendation. I feel like if you're into fantasy romance, I feel like you'll like this series. If you're into regular fantasy, you'll like this series. If you like horror and thriller, I feel like literally anyone can like and enjoy this series. This is sci-fi. This series is the series I recommend to literally everyone I talk to. Anyone I mention reading to and they're like, oh, what book would you recommend? Red Rising is always the book I'm going to recommend. And I love the first book, but you gotta get to books 2 and 3. 2 in particular is just like none other. It is 10 out of 10, honestly 15 out of 10, perfection. Not only is it my number 1 favorite book of all time, this is my number 1 favorite series of all time, and this is also my number 1 recommendation to people in my actual life. So if you take anything away from this, read this series. And that is all 10 of my favorite books in existence as of mid-2025. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your guys' favorite books down in the comments below, or if any of my top 10 are also in your top 10. I would love to hear your thoughts. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one. I love you. Bye.